Welcome to the LSU Sports Insider, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. Perryn Keys here hanging out finally for the first time in a long time. Scott Rabalais and his smiling face after all his world travels. He's back here in studio to go a little bit around the horn today here on the LSU Sports Insider. We're going to talk a little bit about gymnastics, a key returnee coming back to try to help LSU repeat as national champions. We're going to talk a little bit about women's basketball and, of course, football, the NFL draft, what else LSU has to look forward to there. And, of course, we will wrap up with baseball as well because we are getting down to crunch time. And, boy, is LSU getting down to crunch time, too. They've got a long road to go, a long hill to climb, so to speak, to make it into the NCAA regional. So we will get into all of that. But Rab, first, how are you doing with all your world travels and now back stateside and set and settled?
I think I'm finally unpacked from everything. I think all the luggage is put away at least for a few weeks. But yes. But as we're sitting here, I leave 80 days from now for the Olympics.
Oh,
so
you're going to go around the world in 80 days.
That's right. That's what occurred to me. So I thought I'd mention it.
Well, we've got. Speaking of LSU, there's at some point where we'll do the final count. And of course, it's not finalized and settled yet. All these athletes have to go through Olympic trials, but LSU and Louisiana will be well represented in Paris. And I know Rab is looking forward specifically toward. I'm looking most forward to Sha'Carri actually and what she does in the 100 meters. That's going to be must-see TV, obviously. But there's not going to be a better setting, I would say, in Paris than the beach volleyball setup. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh, yeah, 100%. They're building a temporary stadium in this park called the Champ de Mars, where the Eiffel Tower is. And so the Eiffel Tower will be the backdrop. Every time you watch beach volleyball, where LSU's Kristen Nuss from New Orleans and Taryn Cloth will be competing, you're going to see the Eiffel Tower. So I told Kristen, I said, you have the coolest venue. And she said, I know, we do. We really do. So,
at least they know.
Yes, they always have beach volleyball in a cool place. Like in Rio, it was on Copacabana Beach.
That's right, yeah.
And in London, it was like the Royal Horse Guards Parade right by
not
by
a lot of
Buckingham
beaches
Palace.
in London, but they may do.
Not a lot.
Rab, do you promise, not for nothing, but do you promise to bring me back like a beret and a baguette and stuff? Or
Baguette might be a little stale, but if you want a beret, I can help you out.
Absolutely, Mrs. Keys would be thrilled if I started walking around in a beret. Let's get this thing back on track. If you're watching and tuning in or listening to the LSU Sports Insider, you already know, obviously, that the Advocate's the #1 destination for LSU sports. So please join us if you haven't already. If you don't subscribe already, whether that's in print or digital, please go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. You can subscribe there. And please, as we mentioned at the top of the show, obviously there's plenty to keep your arms around with LSU. And so there's no better place to get all your headlines in one spot than the LSU newsletter, the Advocate's LSU newsletter. You can get everything sent straight to your inbox, to your phone, to your desktop. And it's sent every morning. Rab handles that 3 times a week, but it's a daily newsletter. So please sign up for the LSU newsletter. You go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. We are here every Monday and Thursday on the LSU Sports Insider. We are on all our social channels, of course, but specifically our YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. If you search for LSU Tigers on NOLA.com on YouTube, you should be able to find that channel. You can subscribe. That way you'll never miss an episode. And, of course, you can catch us live there on Mondays and Thursdays. If you don't catch us live, you can catch us any old time you like on that same YouTube channel. We are also, if you a little bit more traditional, we are also on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. Just search for LSU Sports Insider. So, Rab, let's first and foremost, let's discuss Kim Mulkey has been a little bit busy since you and I last visited. Mm-hmm. She obviously had to sort of retool her program, retool the roster, and get the program back on solid ground with the departures of Angel Reese and Haleigh Van Lith. So they already had Jersey Wolfenbarger, transfer 6'5" transfer from Arkansas, who committed to LSU sometime right during their run, during March Madness, right. And she's 6'5", but it's a little bit. Well, there's nothing misleading about the fact that she's actually 6'5", but you would assume that somebody like that is, your traditional post player down on the block. She's a little bit more a little bit more diverse in her skills than that. and we will get into that. But also 3 other transfers, all guards that came in or that have committed and signed. Miami's Shayeann Day-Wilson, good Canadian. Arizona's Kailyn Gilbert, and Mississippi State's Mjracle Sheppard. All 3 of them are going to come in and solidify the Tigers' backcourt, which needs really a more of a solidification more than anything in point guard. Haleigh Van Lith, we don't mean this in a mean-spirited way, but we've discussed this before. I think everybody, including her, would agree that she was probably miscast as a point guard. She wound up at TCU at a place where she can go and fill it up, which is what she needs to do to get herself
the feature
to the WNBA.
person in the offense. Yeah.
Yes. So let's just talk about this a little bit. We don't know exactly who's going to play point guard, who's going to be the starting point guard yet, but it's going to be one of these 3 and or last year Poa, who's done a fine job coming off the bench for the last 2 years.
Yeah, I would start with Poa because I would say we can't discount her. I mean, usually when a transfer comes in, you're like, oh, they're coming in to play right away, and I'm sure they will. But Poa has the experience in the system and is a great free throw shooter, and she has to clean up some unforced turnovers sometimes that she makes, but generally, she shouldn't be counted out. I was talking to our Reed Darcy, and he said his money for right now, for what we know, is on Shayeann Day-Wilson. You said she's Canadian?
Yes.
Oh, okay, very good.
Yes.
She's got the most experience. She started 71 games in her career at Miami. I'm intrigued by Mjracle Sheppard from Mississippi State. She didn't score very much, only 5 points per game, but she's noted for being a good defensive player. And I think if anything that LSU missed, aside from having a true point guard and Alexis Morris running the show from 2 seasons ago, is that really good defense at that point guard position. Alexis was an excellent defender. And so if the other 4 can score, starters can score, then you've got maybe you can have that luxury of playing someone. But we're going to see. I do agree with Reed. You would think the Kim Mulkey's MO is that she wants to settle on one person. She doesn't want to do point guard by committee. But in general, it should be a compliment to what is a pretty formidable returning lineup with Anissa Morrow at forward. We're kind of forgetting about Samaya Smith, who got hurt in the pre-conference schedule when they were playing down in the Caymans, but she was a starter and she was looking very good. And by all indications, she's going to be back to start next year. And then, of course, Michaela Williams and Flau'jae Johnson. And I think Flau'jae Johnson is just ready to take off. I mean, we really saw how well she played.
Oh, my goodness.
She played tremendously well in the NCAA tournament. So a lot of good options for LSU, but this was the big issue that had to be addressed. And they didn't go out and get one of the flashiest point guard transfers. You remember last year it was Van Lith and Morrow. They were number 1, number 2 in the country in terms of the transfer portal. They didn't get in those flashes, but they certainly filled the needs well. And we'll talk later about the football. It's like Brian Kelly looking for defensive tackles. He hopes to fill that as well as Kim Mulkey filled the needs at point guard.
It's interesting. Yes, you made mention, and not for nothing, but you're talking about Mjracle Sheppard. She plays good defense, which is we talk about not necessarily from the point guard spot, but just in the backcourt in particular. We first things first. We know that Kim Mulkey wants to play defense first, and everything sort of goes from there. Mjracle Sheppard is said to be a good defender, and if you think back to a key missing piece from this past year's team, Katere Poole, which she wound up actually in 2023, came off the bench for most of the season, but all of a sudden found herself as one of the starting 5 going down the stretch, in part because of her perimeter defense. So that's something to look forward to. And you mentioned Samaya Smith. I think you're right. I don't think you can emphasize enough. I was actually thinking about this earlier this morning about how much of a difference would Samaya Smith have made in that Iowa game. You think about all the point-blank shots and listen, Angel and Anissa are as good as they come down in the post, but all those point-blank shots, they just had one more person that they could have. You have to have somebody who's going to make a good entry pass, of course. But how many more shots from point blank might they have gotten off against Iowa? May have not made a difference because Caitlin Clark was so hot. But no, Samaya Smith, just in many respects, she too looked like she was turning the corner and really starting to turn up as a player before her ACL injury last year.
We'll never know, obviously,
Right.
but I think if she played as well as she looked like she was going to play, they could have beaten South Carolina in one of the two games they played, either the one here or in the SEC tournament.
Right,
if
especially
she has a good game.
You think about that first game in January where Angel fouled out with about 3 minutes to go.
Right.
Well, you would have had, nobody is Angel Reese. We understand that, but Samaya Smith was a formidable presence down there on the block, and you would think that would have certainly helped in terms of being able to sort of hold the fort.
To that point, they are losing Angel Reese, and you can't replace her exactly. But
Automatic double-double.
As Brad Pitt says in the movie Moneyball, when they're trying to replace some of the key players they lose, maybe they can recreate her in the aggregate.
Right.
And by that I mean, this is a team. They were there after Smith got hurt. Their shortcomings on the bench were well known, and Kateri Poole left the team. Their shortcomings on the bench were well known. They're playing Del Rosario, Leah Del Rosario, and she gave them a few points and a few rebounds per game, but mostly she's just filling time,
Right.
try to rest Reese and Morrow, and then you're playing Janae Kent, a little bit off the bench. They should have an 8 or 9 player rotation next year. I would expect Wolfenbarger is going to be a reserve, and then you have all these guards we mentioned. And they're going to have the opportunity to have bench scoring and again and something like that, which is that was the big difference maker between them and South Carolina this year. South Carolina just came at you with almost 2 full teams.
Right.
So LSU is going to be in a much better position for that this coming year. Still got the star players like Johnson and Williams and Morrow, plenty of star power. But more depth.
We barely talked about Michaela Williams, who, by the way, freshman All-American.
Yeah, I mean, So you expect her to make that leap from her freshman to sophomore year, kind of like Flau'jae Johnson did. So not that she was bad this year at all, but you expect her to be even better. So it's a very promising situation for LSU going into the next season.
It's also, you've got your headliners, and there's plenty of them. But by the same token, I think what we see from this group of transfers is that this is less of sort of an all-star team that you're trying to put together, that Kim Mulkey's trying to put together.
Right.
I was thinking, I wish I could remember the year, and I don't. We're talking about 20-plus years ago. But, Rab, you'll probably remember this, when the Lakers put together, it was Karl Malone, Gary Payton, Kobe, Shaq, and, you're talking about 4 Hall of Famers who are out there on the floor, and on paper, everybody said the same thing. It's like, well, who's going to beat these guys? But it just never. It didn't quite work exactly the way you thought it was going to work. It just may have been too many hands trying to stir the pot. So this looks like you've got your superstars, but then you've got a little bit better, a chance for a little bit better roles that are a little bit better defined, and a bench that's a little bit better defined, and also, as you said, a little bit deeper as well. So we will see how that goes. Speaking of All-Americans, though, shifting topics. We need to talk about another All-American, which is goes by the name of Haleigh Bryant. LSU wins the national championship, of course, in early April. A big, huge breakthrough from that program, the first championship for that program. And Haleigh Bryant, everybody's All-American, so to speak, AAI award winner, is the best senior gymnast. Rab, I don't know how you felt about this, but I who would have blamed her? It's not the same as going pro as in other sports, but who would have blamed her if she said, look, this was a great career. This was icing on the cake. This was the cherry on top. I've done everything I've done everything there is to be done on the college level. And now I'm going to ride off into the sunset and go be a professional person,
Right.
a professional, go. I've got my degree and all this kind of stuff. Instead, Haleigh Bryant comes back, and now you're talking about, yet another formidable roster here. With some others to come.
Briefly to summarize, on paper, and we don't know what other seniors, as we're doing this, we don't know what other seniors who are eligible to come back will do so. Kiya Johnson can come back. Olivia Dunne can come back. I expect Alona Shinikova to come back. She missed the whole year with a Achilles injury, and I don't think she wants to end on that note.
Correct.
Sierra Ballard can come back. On paper, this could be an even better team in terms of talent. They bring in the number 1 recruiting class in the country. Led by Zoe Miller. 2 names to know: Zoe Miller and Kalia Lincoln for next year. Zoe Miller just announced that she's not going to try to pursue a spot on the U.S. Olympic team because of a shoulder injury, but Lincoln still will. And then Connor McLean will be better next year. But the headliner is Haleigh Bryant. I mean, she is their Joe Burrow. She is their Jaden Daniels. She is their Dylan Cruz. However you want to put it. Like, how good is a gymnast? She's one of the all-time best. She's their best gymnast ever. I think the national championship and all. She won the individual all-around award at the SECs and at NCAAs. She's their best gymnast, and now she'll have a chance to come for all the records next year. 2 records that come to mind. She has 18 perfect 10s. The record is 28. She had 8 this year, so she's definitely in hailing distance of that.
She'd have to have one hell of a season.
She does.
Could be done.
It can be done. You know, 8's a lot, but she's got a shot. And then she has 94 individual titles. The LSU school record's 114 by Ashley Claire Kearney Thigpen, and I think she'll definitely, if she's healthy, she'll break that record in 5 years. You know, it's interesting. We probably should all sit down and have a talk sometime about how the COVID year has skewed record books across college athletics.
Sure,
and this is an example of that. But yeah, she said we talked earlier this week. She made her announcement on Tuesday, and she said she thought about going out on top, as you said, but she said I just wasn't ready to be done. And remember, this is college gymnastics. There's no professional tour. There's no pro league. There's no Champions League, and she's not going to try for the Olympic team. She said I'm a college gymnast, and real briefly, the skill sets are a little different. You're trying to be perfect in college gymnastics. You're trying to just pile up the difficulty in elite gymnastics or international gymnastics. So she's not trying for that. So one more season, and then she's done. And this is something that she's done her whole life. But most of these gymnasts, they can't remember not doing their sport. They started at 2 or 3.
Yes.
And that's certainly her case. But she said she'll be 23 next season. And after that, she would like to be a college coach. So I imagine someone will be knocking on her door.
Well, and we've seen how many volunteer coaches, ex-LSU gymnasts have come back to the LSU program as volunteer coaches or assistant coaches or anything. You know, Ashley Natt is right there right now. Right. So that's certainly not out of the realm of possibility. And we've seen so many legacies, so to speak, or just great college All-Americans go on and run their own program.
Yeah, this is like having Joe or Jaden decide to come back,
right?
For one more year. And let me mention coaches. We had the whole thing during the national championship.
Oh, that's true.
In Fort Worth. Started hearing about Georgia fired their coach, a great Courtney Kupets Carter, and that they were going to be coming after Jay Clark, who went to Georgia and coached at Georgia, to try to come back. And not only him, but Courtney McCool Griffith and Garrett Griffith, the husband and wife team. She also was a Georgia gymnast, who were 2 of Jay's top assistants, along with Ashley Natt. And LSU had to step up to not only reward Jay financially for winning a national championship, but to keep the assistants as well. They kept everyone. Georgia ended up hiring 2 coaches, promoting an assistant coach and hiring an international gymnastics coach.
It's an odd pairing.
Simone Biles coach, actually.
Right.
So which is kind of interesting. But he's going to stay, and they're going to stay, and the stability is assured for a program that has finally reached that pinnacle and has a chance to stay right up there.
You made mention of several key gymnasts who have a decision on whether they're going to come back or not. Well, we all know for reasons sometimes other than gymnastics, Olivia Dunne is obviously sort of a headliner, and she's got a decision to make too. She's yet to make. We've been sort of patiently waiting for a decision one way or the other. But she does have. Listen, she can, as we've discussed many times, she could retire right this second and never have to go to another practice again, and she'll be okay. She'll be able to put gas in the car.
Jay Clark made a joke in Fort Worth. He said, I got on her one time about something. I said, well, you have to listen to me. You make 10 times more than I do.
which is not a lie.
No, it's not.
But as we've discussed many times, she likes being a gymnast. She likes going to practice and going to work and being part of that team and everything like that. And also, I think it's probably important to note, that she may have I don't know about necessarily a more defined role, but maybe possibly a slightly larger role on next year's team should she decide to come back. So that's something that we're paying attention to as well.
Yeah, she was on the Today Show with Baton Rouge's Kaylee Hartung, actually, and
right.
Al Roker and the crew. And she was asked about that, and she said, winning the championship made me want to come back more, but she has not announced her decision. If I had to guess, I would say she'd come back. I think it's good for her brand to be All-American gymnast Haleigh Bryant instead of what are you? I'm sorry, Olivia Dunne. What are you? Otherwise, are you just an influencer? Or something like that. So I don't know what is your role. So I think it's good for her, and she likes that team concept. And people, I'm sure, wonder her teammates like her. She's just Olivia or Liv. She's not Livy in the gym, and she's a role player. She's not going to be an All-American all-arounder like Haleigh Bryant or Aaliyah Finnegan, who is also coming back for her senior year after winning the NCAA floor title. But she can go in on bars and go in on floor and do the job, and they're not hurting for the fact that they're putting her in there. So if I had to guess, I'd say she's going to come back, but we're still waiting to see.
That's right. This is the LSU Sports Insider, brought to you by the journalists at The Advocate, NOLA.com, and the Times-Picayune. You know where to find all our writers' great work. That, of course, is at theadvocate.com and NOLA.com. Please subscribe if you haven't already. As we often say, this is the number one destination for all things LSU sports. We're The Advocate. That's pretty much all you need to know. We've always been known as the number one destination. So please join us if you haven't already. Whether that's in print or digital, please go to theadvocate.com/subscribe. We've got plenty more to discuss today. We're sort of going all the way around the horn with baseball, football, gymnastics, women's basketball, and the like, which is more proof, again, that there's always something going on campus, and it's a lot to keep your arms around. And so a great way to do that, of course, is to get our LSU newsletter sent straight to your inbox. That way you get the headlines delivered straight to your inbox. No fumbling around the internet searching for news and latest and all those types of jazzy things. You get it all sent straight to your phone, to your desktop, to your inbox. So sign up for the LSU Sports newsletter. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. We are here every Monday and Thursday on the LSU Sports Insider. We are here on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever the finer podcasts are found. Just search for LSU Sports Insider, and it should come up. And we are here on all our social channels live on Mondays and Thursdays, specifically the YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. If you search for LSU Tigers on NOLA.com on YouTube, you should be able to find that page. Subscribe to it. You'll never miss an episode. You can catch us live there. And if you don't catch us live, you can catch us any old time you like after the fact. So please search for LSU Tigers on NOLA.com on YouTube and subscribe. Shifting gears once again, Rab, let's talk a little bit about the NFL draft and LSU's haul in the NFL draft. First round, 3 first-rounders. Yet again, this is something you saw this at the beginning of your tenure as somebody covering LSU sports. It's hard to tell people this now, but appreciate, we've said this many times actually recently, appreciate the level of elite athletes who are coming through LSU. We've gotten used to it. We've gotten used to seeing the best and the brightest go from LSU to the NFL. It's, sort of been a fight between LSU and Alabama the last 15 or so years in terms of which program has the most number of pros, active pros. But, man, this is 3 first-rounders, man. It does not happen everywhere. That doesn't happen almost anywhere else. Jaden Daniels goes, obviously, to the Washington Commanders. Number 2, Malik Neighbors. Number 6 to the New York Giants. And Brian Thomas heads off to Jacksonville, where he'll meet some friends, some old friends that he knows over in Jacksonville. So
Jacksonville was really high on LSU players, were they not?
They must have spent a lot of time in Baton Rouge, it seems like. And we'll get to that because it was a little bit of an eye-popper, them selecting Maason Smith in the second round. But anyway, just let's talk about this a little bit. It was almost a mirror image. Daniels exactly one spot behind Joe Burrow, who went number 1 in 2020. Neighbors, who went, if I'm not mistaken, one spot behind where Jamar Chase went to the Bengals in 2020, and Thomas, the same thing, similar to Justin Jefferson. So all of a sudden, you've got in LSU a place that was just so quarterback devoid for so long. And now you've got a school that's, if I'm not mistaken, it's the first and only school to have 4 quarterbacks taken within the top 3 picks.
That's what I read. Yeah.
Which is incredible. It's
Yeah.
incredible. That's what else can you say? And by the way, credit to Brian Kelly, who's the big knock was, well, I don't know, is he going to have enough talent? Is he going to bring in enough talent? I understand these 3 guys were holdovers, but nonetheless, he got them to where they needed to be.
Yeah. The other 2 were Jamarcus Russell and Burt Jones, my favorite player as a kid growing up. Burt Jones.
You were the right age for that.
Yes,
yeah.
That's right.
1977 NFL MVP.
Yes,
trivia.
Burt Jones. It was NFL MVP. Yeah, it's kind of amazing to think about. The LSU's. I hate to say a quarterback wasteland, but it was not where quarterbacks were cultivated to go onto the NFL and do big things, and where you were likely to get these guys, and now it's 2 Heisman Trophy winning quarterbacks in the last 5 seasons. You can't dispute those things, and they had great seasons, great numbers. They got there a little differently. Obviously, Jaden was more of a runner. But yeah, and then the quarterbacks made the receivers great. The receivers complemented the quarterbacks in both situations, and it was just it was amazing to watch. And now you have LSU seeming like more of a destination. You get Bryce Underwood, who's coming from Michigan. It was the number 1 or 2 quarterback in the country, depending on who you like. Certainly, we're right up there in terms of because and that kind of counters in LSU. Well, they didn't get Arch Manning, out of Newman or something like that. Always felt if a Manning comes to LSU, I'm going to eat this football right here. Okay, that's always been my thinking. But anyway, he didn't come to LSU. He went to Texas, where he's still waiting to play. But it's the dynamic has changed so much, and you have to credit. You have to credit Ed Orgeron,
yes,
for having the vision to go get a Joe Burrow. You have to credit, Brian Kelly and his staff for having the vision to go get a Jaden Daniels, who showed some promise at Arizona State, but certainly, like Burrow, had not been that anywhere near the guy.
When he transferred in, we weren't sure he was going to beat out Miles Brennan.
People would ask me who's going to. I just say, I don't know. I'll pick one. I'll pick Miles Brennan because he had more experience, and of course, we see what happened. But it's really remarkable what has happened, and the whole dynamic of LSU's passing offense. And of course, it'll be a little different this year. But Garrett Nussmeier is a very accomplished passer, and you got Kyron Lacey and C.J. Daniels and all these other guys to be receivers. But I remember writing a few years back, during the Les Miles era, like who was the team right in the middle of the FBS in terms of passing offense? It happened to be Tulane. Yeah. They were exactly in the middle. If LSU could just be that, could just be average, 263 yards passing a game, something like that, 248, something like that. How good they could be with a defense at the time that was very complimentary and a running game, committed to the running game. And now they
had everything else. Yeah. Everything else. Probably more talent even than Alabama. Right there, certainly. Everything but the passing game.
Right. And now they have that. And of course, it's hard to have everything. It's like being a 5-tool player in baseball. It's hard to be that. So it's hard to have everything for a football team. And obviously, they didn't have the defense this past year. So if the defense can just be average this year, and the offense comes along and is not leading the nation, and it's going to be hard to be number 1 in scoring and total offense. Right. That doesn't happen very often. But if they can just be average, then you got a shot at what's most important: being in the 12-team playoff. That's the be-all, end-all from now on.
That's right. Elsewhere in the draft, these 2 in particular, I wanted to discuss because I just think they're both very intriguing and both very intriguing, but for different reasons, the 2 of them. Maason Smith goes in the 2nd round, again, to Jacksonville. And then Mekhi Wingo, both defensive tackles, goes to Detroit in the 6th round. I don't want to speak for you, Rab, but I think I was a little... listen, Maason Smith is part of the all-airport team and always was. 5-star prospect coming out of Terrebonne High School. Never quite, God bless him, that the freak injury against Florida State in 2022, there was nothing he could do. It's not his fault. Nothing he could do about that. He came back obviously this past year, but, didn't produce the way we all thought probably that he would produce. Nonetheless, he goes pro, and nonetheless, an NFL team, boy, they like that size. They like the 6'5" frame, and they like how well he moves and his get off and all those types of things. So I will just say, and I'll throw it to you and just say that I frankly was surprised that he went so high in the second round. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I am a little bit too. I think of a comparison to Brian Thomas. I think if you had to pick the best looking athlete on offense and the best looking physical specimen on defense, those are the two guys you would pick. Mm-hmm. And Brian Thomas is the player who developed himself this past year and finally lived up to that potential of being. He had the first round physical physique, but he had never done it. And then finally he had blooms, and look what he does. He's a first round draft pick of the Jaguars. Maason Smith, the Jaguars they're clearly going on the measurables, and there's a lot to like. Yes. The size, the frame, the ability to probably put on a little more weight, to do all the things that the speed, lateral movement, all those things. He just didn't show it in college. Was it the injuries?
He flashed a little
there were
bit,
flashes,
maybe
but
the injury was played more of a part than we realized.
Yeah, not the dominant player. Now, by comparison, Mekhi Wingo, who went in the 6th round to the Detroit Lions. I got a soft spot in my heart for Mekhi Wingo. This is the guy who transfers from Missouri. Maason Smith gets injured in 2022. They throw him in there. He becomes a third-team All-American. Yep. Just
nobody
shocking.
In the world thought that.
Not at all.
Mekhi Wingo.
And then he was a good, solid player again this year. I think he was all SEC this year. Just really worked at it to develop it. Doesn't have the height. Doesn't have all the attributes that Maason Smith does, but. I know you can't involve in the NFL is certainly not a league for a place for sentimentality.
Right.
But boy, I just think if I was a GM or a coach, I'd want a guy like Maason Smith on my team.
You look at that motor and you say, man, this guy's
Mekhi Wingo on my team.
Yeah.
Both of them, but
Mekhi Wingo. You look at that motor and you think, man, this guy's worth a shot because he's going to look, maybe he does, maybe he makes the team, maybe he doesn't. But I know one thing is that he's not going to show up to training camp out of shape. And once he gets there, he's going to give you everything he's possibly got because he's got, he's spent his entire life at 6'1" or 6 foot or whatever it is as a defensive tackle, proving everybody wrong. And he's certainly going to try to do that when he gets there. And I think he can. Listen, obviously we don't know. It might be, made for a fool later on when somebody busts out this video clip a year from now. But, I don't you think he can make the team and be a nice, solid, rotational player for, first and second down, something like that?
I absolutely do. Yeah. I mean, know.
And by the way, wound up in Detroit where, all of a sudden you're a legitimate Super Bowl contender for the first time in 50-odd years. So good for him.
If you kick the field goal, you are. Yeah. If you kick the field goal instead of going for a fourth down.
So
and Jordan, it was kind of funny. LSU has all these struggles on defense. 3 defensive tackles get drafted. Jordan Jefferson goes also to the Jaguars in the 4th round. It's like, man, they really... I thought they were bad.
Found something they liked over there. Right?
I thought they were bad against the run or against everything. But
yeah, I mean, you say that. Of course, I think it's probably important to note Mekhi Wingo overcame this clearly. And he's got the motor that never stops. But both of those. Well, Maason Smith was there for 3 years and had 3 different defensive line coaches. There was a lot of in and out, a lot of know, and I think we all, again, not to pile onto the previous defensive coaching staff, which has taken more than its. More than its fair share, which is substantial level of criticism. I think it's probably fair to say that maybe they didn't get the best coaching on technique and things. We saw we saw Maason, get up high and maybe not get lower than his, low man wins, right? Maybe get a little bit too high for.
Or remember Pete Jenkins had to come in mid-season and tell him, get closer to the line of scrimmage. I'm like,
how can you not see this on film?
Yeah, you need Pete Jenkins to tell you that? I mean, I'm glad I'm good on you for having, for Brian Kelly for bringing him in, but you really need that?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. But hey, good luck to all those guys. But yeah, I would bet on for what it's worth. I'd be willing to bet on Mekhi Wingo making the opening day roster.
Yeah, and I think most people who watched him here at LSU kind of have a soft spot in their heart for him because they know that he gave it everything he had. He sure did. We will move on. Before we move on, we'll just say that obviously, look, that leads to the next question, which is, gee whiz, what is LSU going to do at defensive tackle? Because they still got this glaring hole. And of course, the transfer portal closed. It doesn't mean that LSU is SOL when it comes to
No, if you're in the
tackles.
portal, you can still sign.
Right.
Yeah.
And so LSU is still actively looking for defensive tackles. Wilson Alexander's got a story up at theadvocate.com that sort of details all that and where LSU stands. Rab, if you want to go for 30 seconds on where they stand, of course we don't know yet, but just sort of where they, LSU knows they have a big, huge, glaring hole to fill.
Break out the reading glasses
at defensive at defensive tackle, and they're still working to address those needs.
Yeah, they got one transfer, of course, already. Gio Paez from Wisconsin, so
Right.
he's already in the fold. But they're trying to get at least a couple more. Tuesday they had a visit from Dominic Williams from TCU. Hope I'm saying that
Dominic Williams, yeah.
Dominic Williams, excuse me. He's also visited Texas, Oklahoma, and Missouri, Missouri. But hey, they had a great season this past year.
Had a better defense than LSU.
Yes,
did,
they certainly did.
Despite what they had on the field.
So a tough battle there, and then Simeon Barrow from Michigan State. They're also expecting a decision by the end of the week, and we're recording this on a Thursday. Could come anytime. LSU's because of the players who have left and transferred and graduated, they're at 82 scholarship players right now, so they definitely have room to add some guys. And some other potential targets: C.J. West from Kent State, Aiden Huntington from ULM, and Terrell Allen from Tennessee State. So if they don't get Williams or Barrow, they probably going to land somebody. They're going to get somebody else at the defensive tackle spot.
And then, as Wilson has detailed right here on this podcast, they had some NIL money set aside for Maason Smith and Mekhi Wingo, who obviously decided to go to the NFL instead. So that money is presumably still there, still sort of earmarked for defensive tackles. And if you're a defensive tackle in the portal, we know they missed on one or two players who have committed elsewhere. But if you're a defensive tackle in the portal, there's one thing that that LSU can sell you on, and that's playing time. And so they should. Again, Brian Kelly's staff, well, hey, can they recruit? Can they not recruit? Well, they've shown elsewhere with their classes and with the incoming class that they'll have in 2025 that they've done they'll be just fine when it comes to recruiting, generally speaking. And if they do a similarly fine job here in the transfer portal in this cycle, then they should. They need guys, and they should be able to get guys. So we will.
They have a need. They apparently, as you said, have some resources to try to get. Look, let's call it what it is. First of all, everyone's looking for defensive tackles, right?
Yes.
I mean, this is a position of need
you
for
need that. And you need corners.
Yeah.
And they're always and tackles, and they're always in high demand.
Right, and so doubly so for LSU, maybe more than some schools, but even schools that are fairly well off the defensive tackle spot, one more defensive tackles, and let's be honest, these guys are looking for whatever deal they can get, and their attraction to LSU is not what a fan's attraction is to LSU.
Right.
Yeah, it's great that LSU has great facilities and a new dining facility and state of the art this and that, but they're also looking for what they're going to get compared to what school X or school Y is offering.
Where's my money? Where's my playing time?
Right, and so the playing time, that's no problem.
That's right.
Playing time at LSU defensive tackle, you're going to get it, but it's a lot of things that are rolled into it now compared to maybe the old days. Of course, in the old days they were paying players under the table, so
What?
I don't know how much has changed, but
Breaking
it is
news
definitely
here.
it looks yeah. Water is wet and as well, so they're gonna get somebody, and you got Bo Davis now coaching the defensive line, and everybody he's universally acclaimed as an excellent defensive line coach, former LSU Tiger, coming back into the fold, and so that is they're going to be better. I'm predicting that despite losing 3 defensive tackles to the NFL.
Listen, you can't help but be better. Okay.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's a low bar to cross, but it may not be exactly where they want to be by the end of by the time the season starts September 1st against USC, but they should be better.
Finally, let's wrap up with this. We must address baseball. LSU is hosting number 1 Texas A&M this weekend, 7 p.m. Friday, 6:30 p.m. Saturday, 1 p.m. Sunday. I mean, we've Cookie Riley here, our LSU baseball writer, was here obviously on Monday's podcast, and we broke this all down. LSU really at the bare minimum needs to go. They've got 9 conference games left. They really need to go 6-3 at the bare minimum. That would get them to 13-17 in conference. If they really want to put themselves in a decent position, they need to get to 14-16 in conference, which would mean that they would have to go. I'm bad at math, but I think that's correct. It would say it was 7-2.
7-2.
And so, but now you've got the number one team coming in. What can you reasonably listen? We know the old Earl Weaver. Momentum is the next day's starting pitcher, right? And Texas A&M has a crazy good offense, a crazy good lineup, very potent lineup that found itself down 9-0 to Georgia in a game last weekend, and then not only came back and won, but came back and run-ruled them 19-9. So they've got the potent lineup. Pitching is not as strong, but then again, LSU's pitching staff has obviously had its struggles as well. To me, Rab, and I'll obviously get your 2 cents on this, but to me that says that there's, I don't want to call it pressure, but yeah, pressure is probably certainly one word for it. A necessary emphasis on Gage Jump having a lights out performance, presumably in that series opener against Texas A&M, because that's going to give you your best chance to win. To steal one of these games, which then puts you in an okay position, maybe against Alabama and Ole Miss to close out the season and get yourself into discussion for making the NCAA tournament and getting into Hoover.
Yeah, I mean, like they had to fight to take 2 out of 3 from Auburn, who's bad, the worst team in the conference at home, and now you got Texas A&M. Baseball is a funny game.
Yes, it is.
I remember a couple of years ago, our Leah Van was covering baseball for us at the time, so I had to go cover the series at home against Ole Miss, who was struggling. Everybody's talking about they're going to fire Mike Bianco. And they swept LSU here, and then they just took off, and of course they won the College World Series. I'm not predicting that for this LSU baseball team, but it's a funny game, and funny things can happen. The best you could hope for with LSU this weekend, the best you could hope for is to take 2 out of 3 from Texas A&M. And you're right, Gage Jump, he has to go out there and hold them down on Friday night. He's got to save the bullpen for later in the weekend, because you imagine they're going to go through a few pitchers against Texas A&M's lineup. So it's just and they've done so well. I know obviously you don't play some of the quality teams, but they've done so well out of conference. They only lost 2 or 3 non-conference games, but this is vital. They really missed a chance to get a sweep against Auburn. Really missed a chance.
That would have put them in decent shape.
But if you had to ask me right now, are they going to make it to the NCAA tournament? I would say no. Right. But because of what they have to do, and Bama's no slouch. They're a better team, but the potential is there. I just look at this team, and it's like when they need a clutch hit, they pitch well, but they don't get the clutch hit.
Koki
they hit well, and then the pitching you can't come through.
Koki and I are going to talk about that, because I do want to go back and look. I went searching for this and came up Snake Eyes. I'm sure it's out there somewhere, and if not, we'll just do the math on our own. But I would love to know what LSU's average is with runners in scoring position in SEC play, because it to your point, it's just, they got all these guys on, and this was the case against Auburn. Certainly, I can't remember which game this was. It must have been the Sunday game where they had runners on, 6th inning, 7th inning, 8th inning, and
loaded the bases.
Only got 1 or 2 in.
That was they were down 7-4, I think, and they loaded the bases. And I'm at the Zurich Classic, and they get 1 run. It's like, boy, you got to have the crooked number. Not enough crooked numbers for in the win column. But again, baseball is the funniest game.
That's right.
And college baseball especially so.
Right.
So we'll see what they can do this weekend against the Aggies. But it's daunting. It's a daunting task for LSU. And let me say, by the way, a lot of people are ragging on Jay Johnson. This guy is he had the best quote that Koki had in a story. He said, however upset people are, I'm 1,000 times more upset, or whatever. And
this is his life.
This is his life, man. This is all he does, and I think he's a good coach, and it's just, it looks like it's kind of like the curse of the national championship. And we've seen this the last 2 years with Mississippi State and Ole Miss winning it, and the next year they don't make the NCAA tournament. So, but it's LSU baseball. They'll get it right eventually. I just think this team, to me, it looks like they've been searching for that leadership that they had last year, not only from Paul Skeens and Dylan Cruz, but from Gavin Dugas or Cade Beloso or something like that. And they've been looking for that guy, and they just haven't found it. And that's not an easy thing. Talent, everybody just looks at talent. The the chemistry, the leadership, the off the field stuff that we don't ever see. We see the tip of the iceberg when they're playing on the field or they're on the court or something like that. And that's only a part of it. Right. And this team is obviously lacking that other part that we don't see. And it's a part no one's going to talk about because Jay Johnson's not going to criticize the team about that. The players aren't going to say, yeah, our leadership stinks. No one's going to say that. But clearly they've been missing that part this year. And can they find someone down the stretch? Can they find someone next year? Eventually they will. But in time for this year, to save this year, I don't know.
They've got a large hill to climb, a large mountain to climb coming down the last 10 games. They've got 10 games to go left, and so obviously we will see what happens. We will be there to report on it all, and of course we will be here to report on everything else as we've detailed in this podcast: women's basketball, gymnastics, football, and baseball as well. And we haven't even gotten to softball yet, which may be LSU's best chance to sort of extend this season a little bit into the summer. So. We will see, and we will be here, of course, for all of it. And so you know what to do if you're going to stay up with LSU. There's one place to go, and that's the Advocate. Please subscribe to the Advocate if you haven't already. As I said, whether it's print, digital, go to theadvocate.com/subscribe and stay up to date with all these things. Not only with our podcast, but with the LSU newsletter. You get it sent straight to your inbox 7 days a week, and obviously with breaking news, when Jaden went number 2 overall, that was breaking news sent straight to your inbox. You didn't have to go searching for it if you were out at a crawfish boil or doing anything that would have been probably a little bit more pleasurable.
My wife, who is not the biggest football fan or baseball fan or something, she tells me all the time, I just got an alert from the Advocate about such and such happening or something.
It's good. We try not to load up your phone with this stuff, but we give you the timely headlines every day, and of course a little bit of breaking news when it's warranted, which seems to be a lot these days at LSU, which is always the case. So please sign up for the LSU newsletter. To do that, you go to theadvocate.com/LSU newsletter. Again, we are here every Monday and Thursday on the LSU Sports Insider. You can find us on all our social channels, but specifically the YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. If you search for that on YouTube, you should be able to find it. You can subscribe. You'll never miss an episode that way. And, of course, you can find us live there on that channel. And if you don't find us live, you can find us, you can call us up any old time you like on that same YouTube channel, LSU Tigers on NOLA.com. And if you get your podcast a little bit more traditional way, you can find us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever other finer podcasts are found. So please do that. Search for the LSU Sports Insider on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or any other podcast platform. Rab, it's been a pleasure. It's good to see you back home, getting a decent night's sleep and doing whatever it is you do on your spare time. I'm sure.
Hasn't been playing golf. Hasn't been playing golf. That's for sure.
Well, and you're not probably gonna be playing today either, with the weather forecast being what
Unfortunately
it is.
not.
So, and by the way, we'll hope for the weather to hold off on Friday too for LSU's game against Texas A&M. Never rains in Alex Box Stadium. I don't know if you ever knew that. Yeah, that's a little bit of a lie. For Scott Rabalais, for Norman Bell, who's filling in for Amelia behind the glass, we appreciate you, Norman. Thank you, sir. I'm Perryn Keys. This has been the LSU Sports Insider.